Welcome back to Photoshop for photographers, and today I'm going to show you how to avoid halos when toning photos. Halos are achieved when you have an area. So let's say, and I'm going to darken this on purpose, this area right here is too dark and we need to open or brighten this area a lot. What happens as you brighten this area, the feather will bleed over into the sky and you'll see that you get this like little halo around the object, and it does not look good, especially in portraits. What we're going to do is we're actually going to darken these images. A lot of times beginning photographers over or underexpose their images. So there are parts of the image in which need to be brightened considerably. That is either because they don't have fill flash or numerous other possibilities. So I'm going to show you how to stay away from halos. This is also going to tie into when to make a selection and when to use your brush to apply a mask. So I've got this first image, and just like I said, we're just going to darken this up a little bit, and this looks pretty good here. And then we've got this image, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to lower the contrast, and we're going to just darken this a little bit. And then I'm going to take the brush. I'm just going to darken that, because what happens in situations like this is obviously this photographer knows what they're doing and used fill flash, but a lot of times you don't have fill flash as a beginning photographer, and your subject becomes too dark. What you're going to have to do is brighten your subject. And when you do this, if you don't make an accurate selection around your subject, it's going to leave sort of a halo. So we're going to kind of screw these up first, and then I'll show you how I will attack it. So we're going to go ahead and select both of these so they both open. So if you have two images and you don't select them both, only one will open, but I've selected both, so they should both open. So we're going to go ahead and close this history. I usually have history off in a different spot. We're just going to close it because we're not going to use it. I'm going to hit escape to get rid of those crop marks. And I think we will start with this image here. And so what we're going to do here is just hit escape, and I'm going to make a simple adjustment layer. I'm going to brighten this up quite a bit. Now, one of the issues as you brighten something up a bit, you will notice that your color intensifies, meaning it gets more saturated, especially reds. So a lot of times you have to compensate for that. Now there are some blending modes, and we haven't got into blending mode, so I'm not really going to show you how to use the blending modes until we actually get to the blending modes. But just realize as you open something up a considerable amount, your colors will intensify and shift a little bit. So sometimes you need to fix that. So if you're getting this building to where it looks better, but it's blowing out the sky, and for some reason, we're going to say we want this sky here. So we're just going to go ahead, open this building up so it's nice and bright. And this is a pretty big adjustment up here. And then I'm going to hit Command-I to go ahead and hide that. And then I'm just going to take my brush and I will make my brush bigger. Now notice, usually when I'm working with my brush, I have a pretty soft edge. So we're just going to go around this, and I'm just going to come. I'm going to be pretty accurate. I'll make it a little bit bigger here. And we've brightened our building. But what you can see is I've got this like halo of where the feather has bled over, and we can see where that transition is, and it doesn't look good. Now, I could come back in here with my brush, hit X, and make that brush a little bit smaller and go ahead and try to paint that away. But you're still seeing that little bit of halo around it. The trick to not getting a halo really is, we will go back in time here. When you need to make a more exact application of a mask, you want a smaller brush and a harder brush. So I'm making that edge softer, and then I need to be more accurate when I come in here and do this. So I've got white, and I need to be more accurate when I come in here. As I zoom in, you can see there's still a little halo right there from that feather. So we want to avoid getting that halo around this image. So we're going to just completely get rid of that. And we're going to just zoom back out. And in this case, I'm going to make a selection. And I'm going to come up here and I'm going to grab my quick selection tool because it's pretty much going to recognize this building really easily. And we just need to get this little piece right here. Got this quick selection, then we can slip over to select and mask. It's missing this little piece right here. I'm actually going to try to go ahead and just use yep, that worked pretty good. I just used the hair refine brush. Now, right here is our feather. And look, as I feather this out and make this feather bigger and bigger and bigger, you would be able to see this adjustment, see it bleeding over into the area, which we don't want. So we want to increase our feather, but we don't want it to bleed over into the sky. So there's a couple things we can do. We're going to make a really soft feather of about 3 pixels. And then we can shift our edge, meaning we're going to shift our edge to the right here. It's going to move everything to the right just a little bit. And the way you do that is just go minus. So where I said minus, and I'm just going to go like -1. And that pretty much did it. So we've made this selection around the building. It is a very small feather. It's there, so it doesn't give us a totally hard edge. You're going to come down here to output, and you're going to change this to selection and hit OK. So now we've made this really exact selection, and we're going to come in here to curves, or you can use levels if you'd like. And as we make this adjustment, because we don't have much of a feather, we're not getting that bleed over into the sky. So I can make this large adjustment here. And because we're blocking it on this area, it's only happening in this area. And you can see we've got a very exact curves adjustment, and it's not blending over and giving us a halo. So that's number one. That is one way you're going to do it. So we're going to come over here and we're going to do the same thing with our subject. A lot of times when you have this, you're going to be like, oh, I need to bring my subject out because I didn't have a light. So we're going to brighten up our subject a little bit. I'm going to hit Command-I. Then we'll take our brush and we'll come in here and we will apply this adjustment to our subject. I'm trying to be pretty exact. We're not going to do the whole body here. And we're just going to come in. And you can see, even when I'm trying to be exact, it does have a small little halo around our subject. Once again, when you're trying to make a large adjustment, if this was just a minor adjustment, you would not see this halo. So a large adjustment on a specific area, it is better to make a selection than apply it with a brush. Most of the time I'm just using a brush because I'm making minor adjustments and they don't need to be that exact. But in a case like this, where I need to make a large adjustment on a small area, it's much easier to make a selection. So in this case, I'm just actually going to select the sky. So I've made the selection on the sky, and I want to actually inverse this. So it's under select and inverse, or it is Command-Shift-I. And that's going to inverse it. So now the selection is here. Now that we have the inverse selected, we're going to want to go ahead and use select and mask. You should always use select and mask. Now it's going to be set by default to the last thing that I had. I'm going to zoom in here to the hair. You can see right in here in the hair, there's some areas where it looks like it should be showing through, and we're missing some little areas here. So we'll take that edge refine, and I will make my brush bigger, and I will kind of paint over this area to see if we get a better selection. Oh, there it goes. It read that area behind it. And you would go over this with any area. And just like before, you can adjust that feather and contrast and smoothness so you don't get a large feather where it blends into the sky. I'm not going to do the whole hair and everything here. We're going to go ahead and output that as a selection. So now we've got not a perfect hair selection. I would normally go in there and refine this and do this much more exact. You can see we're missing her hair right there. Then you can go in and make your adjustment, and because you're going to make sort of a large adjustment, you don't want it to bleed. And just like that, you can see we have reduced it to almost no visible halo on a large adjustment because we made a selection versus applying it with the brush. Hopefully that's been helpful. You learned a little bit how to avoid halos inside of Adobe Photoshop. If you have any comments or questions, you can leave those below. And as always, don't forget to subscribe.